Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. It's Impact Wrestling Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Nix. Let's get right into it. Last couple of weeks have been a bit up and down. A couple of weeks ago, pretty shitty episode of Impact. Last week, right back on track, but nothing that really blew my mind. This week is the kind of week I expect from Impact Wrestling. This is the kind of week that I'm going to enjoy most. This show opened the way I want it to open, with 8 of the best wrestlers, arguably, in the world. A 4-on-4. This is going to be a showcase of sorts for what we expect to see this weekend at No Surrender. And by the way, we will be dropping predictions for that as well, so please make sure you check that out, like, subscribe, all that jazz. 4-on-4 tag team match. Trey Miguel, Josh Alexander, Willie Mack, Suicide versus Chris Bay, Sean Daivari, Blake Christian, and Ace Austin, the X-Cup winner. All 8 of these guys, I do believe, are going to be taking part in this incredible Revolver triple threat match at No Surrender. This is how you open a show. So many times when I watch matches like this, I think, okay, it's just interchangeable spot fests. This is why I prefer Impact to AEW, for instance, because although AEW, there is no questioning the athleticism and the excellence in the ring, the pacing and the lack of storytelling and the lack of psychology can get incredibly frustrating. Not the case in this match. Josh Alexander, for instance, not only is he a world-class accomplished wrestler, but he's just got such a great management of pacing. The way he comes in, his transition holds, the way he slows the pace of the match down ever so slightly, again, just like he did last week with Man Fulton, which meant that when the more high-octane, high-paced stuff started kicking off between Trey Miguel, Chris Bay, Willie Mack, all those kind of guys, it meant something more. Sean Daivari as well. People might have turned their nose up a little bit. Whatever, it's Daivari, I don't care. Well, you should do, because guys like him are ring generals. Guys like him know more about this business than, frankly, I'll ever learn in my entire life. And this match was just phenomenal from the get-go. This, for me, is one of the best matches, if not the best TV match I've seen all year so far. And I've seen some absolute bangers, I really have. Obviously, it's subjective, it's to my taste. But the way you kick off a show is with energy, with pacing, with excitement, with big-name characters. This is how you do it. I don't want to see a 20-minute monologue from insert favourite wrestler here. I don't want to see a slow, sluggish match that goes through 2 different commercials that nobody gives a shit about and ultimately doesn't mean anything. This was perfect. This is how you open up a show. Trey Miguel and Blake Christian, by the way, when they get into the high-paced stuff, that is crazy exciting wrestling. It frustrates me because so many people, particularly the Weekend Warriors, they're on social media, they're talking about Kenny Omega, they're talking about the Young Bucks. Nobody's talking about these guys like Blake Christian, like Trey Miguel, like Chris Bay, who is a bona fide superstar. Willie Mack, who, for my money, should have been a world champion already, and he's definitely up there as one of the most underappreciated, underrated, and underutilized wrestlers in the world, alongside, of course, his boy Josh Alexander. And it's Trey Miguel who comes out with a win in this match, and I think that's fantastic. End of the match, of course, he hits that wild submission on Blake Christian, who, by the way, is really starting to shine through as this incredible young uprising star. Some people might recognize him from GCW. You also will recognize him, of course, from the Super X Cup, where he had a fantastic showing, ultimately losing out to the winner that was, of course, Ace Austin, who again was fantastic in this match. Nobody had a bad match here. This was fantastic. And after Trey Miguel picks up the win, Sami Callihan is seen on the Titantron talking a little bit of shit, giving a little bit of trash talking to Trey Miguel. And I'm really loving this because I've been a little critical, not of Sami Callihan, but the booking and the creative for him. Because after OVE was kind of dismantled due to, unfortunate circumstances, it felt like Sami Callihan was kind of left with all the pieces in his hands. Like, great, what am I supposed to do with all of this? And it's been difficult for me to be invested in him in the same way I was when he had the initial rivalry with Eddie Edwards, a lot of the great stuff that he did with OVE, the rivalry with Tessa Blanchard as well, and it just feels like he's kind of been on a, not a downward trajectory, but wrestlers have up and down moments, It's like what if, I liken it to watching an NBA basketball game. There are times when your team is smashing in points left, right, and centre, and there are other times when the other team goes on a run. Runs are very important in wrestling, and very seldom does a wrestler just consistently go on a run and have no hiccups. And this has been one of Sami Callihan's hiccups, but it feels like we're back up again. And this rivalry with Trey Miguel is fantastic. questioning Trey Miguel's passion for the business, questioning his ambition, whether he can handle it. It's essentially saying, when the going gets tough, mate, the tough, they get going. And you don't get going, you just fucking run away. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this, and hopefully it's going to be long term. After all that excitement, after all that optimism, after all that positivity, we're then hit with the women's match. ODB versus Kimberly. Nothing wrong with it. Bit short, if you ask me. Physical. It's not often you get to watch a women's match that starts off with a boob off, a meeting of the mammaries, so to speak. Kimberly decides, do you know what? You have got an ample chest, Ms. ODB, so I'm going to challenge you by squeezing my breast together. By the way, you can borrow some of mine if you like, ultimately. But yeah, she goes charging in chest to chest and falls flat on her ass, and that kind of set up the match nicely for me. I really enjoyed that beginning, but nothing really exciting about it. I like Kimberly. She's a good ring hand, but, you know, this was very much just a match. One of the biggest problems with this match was the fact that actually, ultimately, it was kind of used to set up the 6 women's tag team match, because Deonna Purrazzo gets on the ring apron, then comes Jordynne Grace and Jazz. They interfere in the schmoz. Kimberly gets a roll up on ODB. Congratulations, ODB, you return your first singles match in God knows how long, and you lose. Although, in a way, kind of nice that she's putting over the more modern generation of talent. Something that other companies could really pay attention to in this regard. But I don't really care about this match. And I've got to say, I really don't care about Susan either. Even if she's going to throw a shoe. Who throws a shoe? Honestly. D'Lo Brown dropping the reference. Appreciating that Austin Powers work, D'Lo. Lovely stuff, mate. By the way, D'Lo Brown, Matt Striker on commentary. Fantastic. Really enjoying those guys. Already clicked so nicely. Got a great chemistry. Already feel like a really big time pairing on comms. And they get the product over better for me than Madison Rayne and Josh Matthews did. Particularly Josh Matthews, who I was never a huge fan of in terms of his in-ring ability and also in terms of what he brought on the mic as well. It's time for Jake, cousin Jake, to decide whether he wants to join Violent by Design. One thing I really appreciate about this segment was it took place in the ring. A lot of their stuff, particularly their story building stuff and their promos, it happens backstage because of the filming and the way things are laid out. So it was actually nice to see something that took place out there in the arena. It felt like it had more gravitas and more importance. Although I'm not a huge fan of Violent by Design as an entity, I love Eric Young. I think cousin Jake has something going for him. I recognise him as Jake something from Destiny, and that's how you'll recognise him too, because ultimately, great line actually, he says, you know what? Somebody said to me, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I stand for Jake something. Throws the towel on his face, tries to get at his cousin Cody. Ultimately, the heels get on top of him, get him in the old neck vice with a chair, and you're thinking, oh, okay, they're going to put him out of business. And no, Cody says, whoa, I want an opportunity at him. And Eric Young's like, fine, you want it? You can have it at No Surrender. And that sets up a really good blood rivalry match between Cody and Jake something. So he's no longer cousin Jake. He's reborn, so to speak, as his independent character, which of course is Jake something. And that all of a sudden gives me just a little bit more interest, because I have been quite critical of this rivalry up until now. But this, like I say, gives me just that little bit more investment. All of a sudden I'm thinking, do you know what? Okay, I'll give you guys an opportunity. Good Brothers backstage, by the way. Love that little promo. So the Good Brothers had that fantastic little run in WWE. Yeah, very underrated for my money. And one of the things that they really hung their hat on with AJ Styles was beat up John Cena. And then last week it was beat up John Moxley. And now this week it's beat up James Storm and Chris Sabin, hyping that tag match for later in the night for the Impact World Tag Team Championship. I love this promo. I'm not a huge fan of AEW, like everybody knows. I'm not a huge fan of Kenny Omega. I don't really like this Reborn Bullet Club bollocks. But I will say one thing. I love these two. These two have always been fantastic. For me, Carl Anderson, along with Tama Tonga, has always been the heart and soul of what the Bullet Club is. You know, the Biz Cliz. Arrogant, obnoxious Gaijins. And these two are fantastic. And the chemistry that Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson have is phenomenal. And that's why I constantly listen to Talking Shop. I love these two. I think they're absolutely incredible. I would say I desperately want to interview them for the podcast, but let's be fair. When Talking Shop is as popular as it is, you ain't going to come on this Scrubs podcast, are you? As simple as that. So help us out with a few more subscribers and make sure you tag the boys, the Good Brothers, because ultimately they might pay attention to it enough if we can get enough clout. But I love this. I thought it was a hilarious promo. Set me up nicely for later in the evening. More women's stuff as well. The women's tag team titles, the knockout tag team titles, they just don't feel like they have much gravitas yet. And a lot of that has to do with, like I said last week, the real lack of other tag teams to get involved. So, Fire and Flavor, who look gorgeous and are hilarious talkers and decent ring hands, they go up against Havoc and Nevaeh again. And I don't have a problem with that, but, classic wrestling storyline. 1 week, 2 of the wrestlers will face each other from a tag team, and then the other 2, the following week, will have the singles match that the 2 had last week. It's standard fare, and this week it was Nevaeh versus Kiera Hogan. I gotta be honest, didn't enjoy the match that much. I don't think that there was a very good representation of styles here from either woman. I really like Nevaeh, actually. Got a wicked crush on her. I think she's beautiful. She's very funny. I love the fact that it's heaven spelled backwards. It's kind of like a really sweet appearance. And you think, oh, she's very cute. She's very beautiful. And then she kind of rips your face off and you think, it's pretty hot, if I'm being honest. Ultimately, I'm not going to make a pass because Jessica Havoc will drop kick me square in le bollocks, and rightfully so. But ultimately, I didn't enjoy the match as much as I wanted to. It was fun, but it wasn't, it didn't set the world alight. It just felt very average. There were quite a few missed spots. It was quite sluggish. It felt like they were trying to lead each other to different spots and things. But I did like the ending. Last week, I was very complimentary about the way they ended their match with the weird kind of disqualification. The case of, that person got involved. So instead of just getting involved on the other side of things, they used that as a distraction, which is what happened. They've built this very flimsy rivalry with the referee, who has obviously been refereeing all of their matches. He was at the Fire and Flavor Festival, which was, let's be fair, fucking garbage. And at the end of this match, Tasha Steelz gets in, thinking she's not going to get caught, and the referee's like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Boom! Hits Nevaeh, and of course causes an immediate DQ. And obviously, backstage, they're just, inconsolable with rage, and they have to go at Scott Moore for it. But, it builds to this weekend. They've spoken about how their tag team match is now going to be no disqualification. So I'm quite excited to see what they can do from that. Hopefully after this, we're going to move on and see more tag teams enter the fold. But for them to do that, they're probably going to have to bring in some new talent or some talent that they used in a tag team tournament we haven't seen since then. As a side note, really enjoying the Tommy Dreamer stuff. It's his 50th birthday. This weekend at No Surrender, we know he's going to be facing Rich Swann. That was kind of the main event of this show, but I really like the vignettes. I was particularly a big fan of Eddie Kingston, who was like, I have to put this motherfucker over more? And MJF and Chris Jericho as well. I'm not a huge fan of AEW, but I love some of the talent they do have. Eddie Kingston and MJF especially, I think, are absolutely world class. And MJF calling him a piece of shit and old, and then Jericho ripping into him. I thought it was quite fun, It was nice to see them kind of keep their characters to a certain extent, and it was actually quite heartwarming, and it helped break up the show a little bit, and I appreciate that. Something I have no interest in is Caleb Conley. I just don't like the guy. And hey, maybe I'm not supposed to, so he's probably sitting there thinking, good you fucking Mark, you're getting worked. But for me, I just don't care. I feel like Tenille Dashwood as well could be doing more. And this was kind of moving towards the Fire and Flavor Festival in terms of its cringiness. So Triple XL are out there, Larry D and AC Romero. Obviously, they're going to use Tenille Dashwood to get at Rosemary because as men, they wouldn't dare hit a woman. There goes your equality, ladies and gentlemen. And ultimately, they're standing out there, and Tenille Dashwood gets on the mic and just makes this really cringy promo. Maybe that's why she's not getting used as much. This certainly isn't going to help it. I feel like she's got so much potential. I think in ring, she's genuinely one of the most underrated workers. Her stuff at the back end of her WWE career, including that infamous match with Asuka, they were fucking great. Her rivalry with Paige on NXT was great. So what the fuck is this? She comes out, she says, decay, that's something you get on your teeth. And then Caleb Conley calls them tooth decay. It's just the wrong side of cringe. It's too much. It's too much cringe. It's a bit cheap. And luckily, Decay come out and they're like, hey, you know what? You challenged us to find a third individual. Somebody who can challenge all 3 of you at this upcoming pay-per-view. Because it's going to be Triple XL and Tenille Dashwood versus Decay. And Decay need a third member, obviously. Another male member. They found themselves a beauty. Everybody knows that I love Mexican wrestling. I love Triple AR. Here comes Black Taurus, or Tarus, as Rosemary pointed out. Oh, mate, this is my kind of wrestler. He's big, he's burly, he's aggressive, he's ugly, he's almost borderline horrific. Very typical of the Mexican style of wrestling. They really like to evolve the masks much further than the standard lucha libre that maybe some people are fully aware of. And he's a fantastic hand in AAA, so I knew I was going to get a bit of Smash Mouth wrestling, and he just dismantled that prick, Caleb Conley, with a K. I just fucking, no. Something about him that rubs me in the wrong way. And that's good news, because Taurus ran him over like the little bitch that he was, and I loved it. Man, that guy can go, and I'm so excited. Really hope this is going to lead to him being used a lot more, because he genuinely is such a great and exciting international powerhouse. Another guy who hopefully, with the right kind of platform, could really burst onto the international scene. And hopefully people, I know that AEW have kind of been dipping their toe into Impact. If they're not looking at this guy and thinking, wow, we could use him, especially with such a fantastic Hoss division, because there's one thing AEW does have a lot of, it's fantastic world-class heavyweight wrestlers. Black Taurus versus Lance Archer. Mwah, give me some of that. By the way, that flying press Samoan drop, I've seen other wrestlers do it. Umaga used to do it, but it just never gets old. It is such a gorgeous move, and it's so high impact, and it looks devastating. It's absolutely beautiful, and frankly, I love this match. Actually, it was my second favourite match of the night. Not just because I got to see Caleb Conley get his ass whipped, but also because Black Taurus is just so fucking exciting, and I love hard-hitting, violent, very quick Hoss fights. Perfect for me. Loved it. Loved every second of it. And ultimately, it makes me more interested in that match, because I must admit, I'm looking at their match at No Surrender and thinking that's probably one of the weakest matches on the card that I care the least about. But with Black Taurus in there, I'm not going to skip it. I'm going to pay more attention to it because I am such a huge fan of his. On to our wrestling main event. Oh, man, I was so excited about this. I was buzzing, and they teased us, but they didn't quite give us everything we wanted. Chris Sabin and James Storm versus the Good Brothers, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, who, by the way, during their entrance, when he's got the belt and it's basically a giant cock is what he's insinuating, and Anderson's got it. He's like, I thought that was fucking funny. Call me a child. I honestly popped so hard for that. Just made me smile, man. This is something that Raw and WWE as a whole just doesn't do enough of. Let the wrestlers have fun, And that's one thing that I love so much about Impact, is seeing the wrestlers have fun. That entrance popped me no end. What I saw of this match was actually excellent. The problem was that this match wasn't nearly as long as I would have liked. It was a good tag match, but I was expecting this to kind of be the blockbuster 20-minute main event. But because of No Surrender, and obviously with Private Party being involved in that now triple threat tag team title match, obviously we weren't going to get nearly as much of this match as as advertised. So the Private Party kind of come down to the ring after some fantastic stuff. James Storm is going crazy with his House of Fire. Luke Gallows' facial expressions during this match actually really popped me as well. I don't know what it is about the guys. They just make me smile so much. I love them. But yeah, at the end of this match, ultimately it looks like Chris Sabin and James Storm are going to capture the tag team championships, which is really awesome. By the way, normally I would get on about two singles guys being a tag team, but you're talking about arguably two of the greatest all-time tag team wrestlers with different partners in Motor City Machine Guns and Beer Money. So them kind of coming together makes sense and really covers for the fact that they're not legitimately a tag team between themselves too often. And I love that. Obviously with things going on with Shelley, and obviously with Robert Roode being a part of WWE now and being tag team champions in his own right with Dolph Ziggler, this actually really makes sense. Private Party come down to the ring, interfere, because they kind of jump in the ring, a bit of a love tap, and then back off again. I quite like that, because Matt Hardy's trying to get over the fact that, they're a couple of pussies. That's kind of it. And I love Private Party, and I'm so excited for this weekend, because these three tag teams going after each other for the tag titles, that could steal the show easily. There's a couple of matches on this card that really could steal the show. I'm going to talk about it more on our No Surrender preview, but I really am excited about this match. I think it's really got a great deal of pedigree and potential. And of course, with the DQ finish, we only get a little taste of what we could get later down the line. And closing the show, of course, was Rich Swann and Tommy Dreamer. And I didn't think this was going to really deliver nearly as much as it actually did. I've gone on record as saying that I don't dislike anyone involved in this. I think Rich Swann is probably my favourite world champion in all of wrestling at the moment. That being said, I don't care about him defending the title against 50-year-old Tommy Dreamer, especially as I just know he's not going to win, especially with Moose lurking in the background. But this segment was beautifully delivered and definitely one of the better contract signings you'll probably ever see in an actual wrestling format. Rich Swann and Tommy Dreamer look like they've kind of got this, there's a level of respect there. They're almost friends, really. They're talking it out. Then Moose interrupts. Scott D'Amore is fantastic as the kind of the headpiece of this. He's sitting at the head of the table, so to speak. No offense, Roman Reigns, please don't kill me. But ultimately, it just felt very smooth and almost organic, and I love that. I love the fact that Tommy Dreamer fires up, because obviously Moose and Rich Swann get each other's faces. There's that beautiful image again of both the belts, each of them holding up their titles. That TNA title, that isn't even legitimately recognised as a heavyweight title within kayfabe in their company, and yet it feels like a bigger deal than, I don't know, half the WWE titles do. What does that tell you? It's all about booking. It's all about creative. And I love that. And of course, Tommy Dreamer snaps. He's like, what the fuck do you two think you're doing? Shut the hell up. This isn't what this is about. This is about respect. This is about trying to give people an opportunity to escape for 3 hours from the bullshit, from the evil of what is going on right now in the world. He cuts that really impassioned promo, kind of drops in the fact that Moose texted him after that match they had with Slammiversary. And I love that. And ultimately he said, you know what? We're not going to have one of these ridiculous, over-the-top booked schmozzes at the end. No, I'm just going to raise your arm. We're going to walk out like gentlemen, people who love this business, because ultimately we should be giving the people what they want in the ring, at the pay-per-view, not at the end of this. Very refreshing, very different take for the go-home show to No Surrender. Moose backs away instead of getting involved, which is great, because Scott D'Amore essentially says, get involved, I'm going to suspend you. And ends a absolutely fantastic episode of Impact Wrestling. And last week, I must admit, I was thinking, am I going to watch No Surrender? I might do. I might just pick up the highlights or whatever it might be. Now, I've dedicated my time and money to actually watching it, because they've built it up so beautifully. This is the best go-home show I've seen to a mini pay-per-view of sorts for many a month, actually. I really do labour at some of the go-home shows, especially that WWE and AEW do. It just doesn't feel big enough. It doesn't get you invested and excited enough, whereas Impact have really, really whet my appetite for what should be a magnificent No Surrender. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be dropping predictions for No Surrender later in the week, so please check that out. But that's it from Impact Wrestling. Thank you very much for getting us over 200 subscribers. We are now at 205. Last time I checked, yes indeed, we are now the new 205 Live, and ultimately just as many people watch us as they do 205 Live from what I can tell. And that's not because it's shit, it's because nobody really cares, and that's a shame, because I actually really like 205 Live. But thank you so much, and that means, of course, we will be giving away a free t-shirt or a free piece of art. So let us know in the comments which one you would prefer. Ultimately, whoever wins will give you the option of one or the other. There's the piece of art, just so you know what kind of art to expect if you opt for that instead of a free t-shirt. But that doesn't mean that the giveaways have to stop. There's still plenty of time. We've still got a good 18 days of February left, so if we can get to 300 subscribers, boom, there'll be more free merch being given away. For every 100 subscribers we get, we're going to be giving something away until the end of February. And who knows, if you guys keep supporting us, leaving comments, interacting and helping us grow in terms of the amount of numbers that we're getting, we may just make the giveaways a regular thing every single month. Thank you very much for watching the WrestleBlog. Please stay tuned. We've got so much more content coming, including 2 very exciting interviews with 2 really big stars in the wrestling world. One, a huge up-and-coming star, and one is an individual you will recognise quite a bit, particularly if you're a fan of Impact Wrestling. But from myself, Aeron, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you very soon for more content from the WrestleBlog.